Okay, good day, ladies and gentlemen. We might have to start while our colleagues on the way will have to catch up with us. And thank you so much for joining us in this Zoom web conference today. My name is Clara Nwabweze. I am the Business Development Manager with Ethnos IT Solutions. For some of us here, Ethnos is already a familiar name, and we thank you for that. And for our new prospective customers that we will have here today as well, we welcome you and thank you again for making the time to join us today. Ethnos IT Solutions is a cybersecurity company based in Lagos, and we pride ourselves as a security problem-solving company. And please note that at this section, we will have everybody on mute, and we plead your indulgence on this, please. And if you have a question during the presentation, kindly drop it in the chat box, and we will take on your questions after the presentation. Thank you once again and welcome. On to the topic of today, as displayed on the screen, we will be touching the capital market cyber risk. Basically, the capital market cyber risk is essentially going to be aimed at giving us an insight on how we can ensure business continuity in case of a cyber attack, resilience, and also profitability. Now, this market is not new to any of us here. We are all in the business of trading in stocks and trading in investments with the Security and Exchange Commission, SEC, as its regulatory body. I remember having a conversation because I am the business development person and I engage a lot with the different people in the industry. And the MD, during the course of this conversation with one of the stockbroking firms, we were trying to offer him a solution to protect his business better. And he told me, Clara, look, we can't be attacked. We are too small. What would they be targeting? How can we be attacked? We've never been attacked. What would they be looking for? And I also know that some of us here too might have the same notion. But it's very crucial to note that the fact that it has not happened does not mean it will not happen. It's not, God forbid, it's not a jinx. And the fact that it was not investigated and reported does also not mean that it did not happen. The truth is that cyber threats or cyber crime has been invading our world and affecting businesses, and the stock market is no exception. These attackers, they have become smarter, they have become more sophisticated, and these attacks have become more frequent. What do they target, you might ask? They can target your critical confidential data. They can target your organization's critical assets. They can target your bank account, even your payment chain. They can initiate what we call a distributed denial of service DDoS attack, which leads to a service unavailability. My colleague is going to dive into that in a little bit. So these attacks can also lead to loss of data, which we don't want. I know a lot of us that with a couple of the brokers that I've met, some of them also use mobile application for trading. Imagine that application being hijacked and transaction being redirected. These are possible scenarios that could happen in our world today. Imagine what happens to a business with all this chaos going on and posing huge risk to the business, posing huge risk to the market, even risk to the industry as a whole, which is why one of the reasons the NSC mandated the compulsory VAPT exercise that we have done for some of you and still hoping to do for the people that have not done theirs. Because at this point, we have to take a proactive measure and not wait to have a business downtime before we act. So at the end of this section, we do hope to be able to highlight how we can protect our business from this cyber attack, how we can continue business operation in the event that this attack happens. And also, some of us might want to have one or two questions in VAPT answered, because I've had some concern where people are asking me, why do we need to do this? Why are we being forced to do this? It's very important. So at the end of this section, we will be able to answer your questions. You will be able to get more clarity. And of course, position your business to have more leverage in the market. So I will be handing over to my colleague, Goodness Obani is here with us. Goodness Obani is the Chief Technology Officer of Ethnos. He will also be giving us more highlights on the agenda for today. So Goodness, thank you again and welcome. So Goodness.
Okay. Thank you very much, Clara. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in this session. I'm happy that you could be here. Um, I know most of us who are on this session some are compliance officers, some are business leaders in their own field, some are IT professionals. And I believe that one of the things that bring us all together in whatever player that we are running a business is simply to make money. I mean, that's the end goal. That's the reason why we're all in business, to make money. So let's talk about making money. I mean, you will agree with me that as much as we want to talk about making money, we will also talk about not losing money. So we would not lose the one that we have gotten. We would not lose our investment in our business. And that's the reason why in most organizations, they always speak to what they call operational risks in the environment. Operational risks that have to do with the different things that can cause us to either lose money or become defaced or lose our stakeholders' interest in our business. And that is what's the reason why we do operational risk assessment so that we don't fall into the category. However, in discussing operational risks, most people, especially within this market industry, fail to consider cyber risk or cyber security related risk as part of operational risk. As my colleague had mentioned in the beginning, most times it has to do with the fact that most of them don't really see or have never heard of an attack within the organization. Well, the good news is that you have not heard of an attack to your own organization. You have not heard about it. But I'll also tell you the bad news. The bad news is that that attack has happened, but you don't know. You see, there are essentially two types of organizations that we talk about when discussing cybersecurity. They are organizations that have been hacked, but don't know that they have been hacked. And they are organizations that have been hacked and know that they have been hacked. In either instances, the only thing differentiating them is that one knows and the other does not. And you see, therein lies our problem. The one that the case where we know about it, or the company that know about it, is because it is recorded. Like the ones that we are seeing right here that I'm displaying on the screen. These are cyber attacks that have gone on different organizations at different stock markets at different points in time. The latest that happened with the Equivox, where about 143 million US customers were affected. These are the ones that we know. Then for those that we don't know, or for the organizations that claim that they have not been hacked, the proper answer is simply that they do not know that they have been hacked. And this is the main reason why it is important that we talk about this subject. Because as much as we want to make money, as much as we want to be profitable, we don't want to lose most of our income or our business simply because we failed to take in or we failed to do some simple cyber security hygiene. And this is the reason why we are discussing about it today. So to put things in proper context, it will be important, it's helpful for us to understand how exactly do cyber attacks work, especially within our market industry. See, in the beginning, like most of you who are professionals on this forum here, all began your careers or in this industry when you were still using paperwork. Most of the bonds, the securities that you exchange from time to time, were simply done using file and paper, where you store a customer's information in cabinets, file cabinets. You keep them hanging around somewhere in your offices. However, with the Internet of Things, new technology infrastructure has come into play. More and more customers are demanding ease of doing business so that anyone can stay at his home or at any remote location and at the tip of his finger, either using the mobile app or on the web, they can be able to carry out security trading or trading on whatever platform that they want to. This is what we call the Internet of Things. And with this Internet of Things poses our huge problem because we live in one whole big and rather small global digital village. The cyber attackers are also a major stakeholders in this cyber village or in this cyberspace. They understand the cyberspace. In their goal in trying to cause havoc, they try to go for what we call the lowest hanging fruits or this little or the parts of every market industry that will be easier to gain entrance to, but will give them more financial gain. And we're going to talk about the capital market as a case study. Most of the capital market is broken down into the primary market and the secondary market. The focus for the cyber attackers is not really on the primary market because that is not where financial gain is. It's majorly on the secondary market, the more liquid market, where the exchange or where the bonds are traded, where there is actual money that is supposed to be gotten. Now, within this secondary market, a cyber attacker in his mind maps out the different components of this secondary market that are interesting to him, where he can gain entrance to and make money. It begins with securities that are being exchanged. The stock exchange itself, another fruit, they call them juices or fruits that the cyber attacker would like to gain entrance to. Then there are clearing and settlement depositories, the clearing depository settlements too, another beautiful place that the cyber attacker will want to gain access to. Of course, there is the stockbrokers and there are different online trading platforms, and then the depositories. Each of these components that are found within the secondary markets are what interest an attacker. They are the easiest to break in within the capital markets, and they're the ones that bring the most financial gain. So essentially, this is how an attacker thinks. The question now will be, what are the different risk scenarios that most attackers try to do within this particular capital market? One of the risk scenarios that we're going to talk about is the data that are held in central security depositories. See, most of the data that is held in central security depositories are made up of unstructured data, most of them holding share certificates or other share information for the different customers or those who have bought some stocks or bonds or shares. Now, because of the unstructured data, most cyber attackers would go after that because they want to be able to manipulate the data held in this infrastructure, in these security depositories. There is also the risk scenario of manipulating market and reference data, such as the standing settlement instructions or pricing information services. Most attackers would also want to go into this. In fact, you will see cyber attackers creating accounts on some of these online trading portals. The goal is to be able to enable fraudulent payments. They want to be able to relay incorrect material financial information so that people who want to come and do some play within the markets, the real participants that want to actually come and do business, will be influenced by these fraudulent transactions, and there will be a release of sensitive information. There is also the part where cyber attackers exploit the algorithmic trading. So they go behind those systems that do the actual computation of the trading and the values that you see on the trading portal and provide fake orders. There is also the settlement part of it within this risk scenario that we're going to talk about. The settlement that does the actual ensuring that the credits that leaves a particular customer is actually debited from the other customer, and that's actually what the exchange and the settlement does as part of that final process. Attackers to go after that. They try to increase the gain on these trades, especially for those who are credited or debited, thus creating havoc within the market. Then there is also the part of communication. falsifying trade orders. See, between the stockbrokers and the customers, they exchange information using email or any other means of communication. Attackers also go attack that particular entrance point because they want to be able to falsify some of these trade orders, exploit these communications, act as middlemen to infiltrate these communications and obtain sensitive information. We can go on and on about the different risk scenarios that can happen across this different markets industry. But you see, the common factor among all of these different risk scenarios is data. You see, data is what you as a player within the market industry uses to be able to make decisions as a business leader, whether you are a stockbroker, whether you are an assets manager, whether you play in the stock exchange itself, whether you are in the central depositories and settlement system, wherever you are, data is key for your business. And so the common factor among all of these different scenarios is the cyber attackers try to manipulate this data because they understand that by manipulating this data, they can be able to achieve financial gain. When my data is manipulated in a way that will enrich either myself or another person, I have caused havoc to your business. And essentially, you begin to lose business. That's essentially what these risk scenarios all speak to. It is based on this that we inform organizations that as much as we want to make money, as much as coming into business, it's a rather small market. I mean, it's not as sophisticated as the other financial institutions like the banks and the insurance companies. But again, it's still a market industry where money is made. And because we want to make money, we'll also think about not losing it. Cyber risks or risks that happen within the market industry is one of the major causes of the losses that you're going to see within this market. However, what do we now do? The question now is, what do we do as a way of ensuring that while we are staying in business and remain profitable, we also counteract the cyber attacks that happen within this industry? Well, what we have done is that we have come up with a cybersecurity framework, and we have essentially made it as simple as possible. You see, things are not supposed to be that really complex. The more complex things are, the more difficult it is to implement. So we've come up with a three-step approach to cybersecurity, which we're going to be discussing here. This three-step approach is something we have customized to the market industry, to the capital market, because we understand that this is not a very sophisticated or very big so much money making kind of industry. However, it's still a money making industry, however you look at it. So what is this three-step approach to cybersecurity? We'll begin with the very first one, which is identify. Now, in identification, what exactly are we saying? We are simply saying, what do we own and where are we? Where are we in the stream of time? In cybersecurity, in the cybersecurity risk aspect of it, where are we? In determining where we are, we want to understand first what our assets are. The typical organization today is made up of three components: the people, the processes, and the technology. In determining an organization, in trying to identify the assets within an organization, most people only tend to think of the technology within the organization. However, it is also important to identify the people as an asset within your technology and begin to identify them and be able to manage them. So identifying the assets, infrastructure, and people-wise is also important for us to be able to determine where we are. There is also the part of identifying who has access to and what. Now, this is also important. You see, in speaking about cyber risk scenarios, one of the things that we try to consider or always bring to the attention of business leaders within this market space is insider fraud. Insider fraud happens to be one of the leading causes of cybersecurity attacks, because you have a person within your organization who knows the workings of your organization, who understands it, who understands where every technology asset is placed. You want to determine within your organization who has access to what in your organization and what exactly does he have access to. By his level of business, is he supposed to have access to this particular thing? Is he supposed to have access to a particular sensitive file based on what he is supposed to do? Again, are we able to track and monitor what exactly he's doing at every point in time? Your IT persons, your IT infrastructure in place. Say, for example, you outsource it to a third party, which is good for business. Again, are we ensuring that we're able to manage this outsourcing? Because essentially what you're doing is that you're simply sharing your risk. The risk that you're supposed to own, you're simply sharing it. Probably because we want to be able to, cut down on costs. That's why we share this kind of things. We share this particular responsibility. But again, you're essentially sharing your risk. Because whatever happens to the person, to his infrastructure on the other side, it's essentially going to impact on your business. So who in your organization and third party, what does it access to and who is he? So then again, not to be overlooked is something that we have always discussed with most of the professionals who are on this call, vulnerability assessment and penetration tests. Now, this is why vulnerability assessment is important. It helps you to be able to determine where, what specifically are my risks. You see, in the last slide, we talked about generic risk scenarios that can apply within the market space. However, for my own organization, I want to determine what exactly are my own risk scenarios, because every organization is different from the other. No two organizations, no matter how close they are in that particular market business that they're doing, will have exactly the same kind of operational risks. And that also applies to cybersecurity risks. We want to be able to determine what are my cybersecurity risk scenarios. The key to determining that is doing a vulnerability assessment. But it doesn't just stop at doing a vulnerability assessment. We also want to determine whether those risks that have been presented to us, whether they are actual risks from the vulnerability assessment. And that's where penetration testing comes in. In penetration testing, we are actually exploiting those risk scenarios in a controlled manner to be able to determine that these are actual threats to my organization or actual risk scenarios. Then I'll begin to implement controls to be able to fix it. And that's actually why vulnerability assessments and penetration testing exercises are recommended. Then after identifying where we are based on what we own, based on cybersecurity wise, what position we are, the next thing will then be to protect what we own, protect and defend. Now, again, in speaking about protection or implementing protection techniques or technologies to protect what we have, most times we always go the path of there is not enough, the things to be implemented are so sophisticated. And that is true. When speaking about risk, when speaking in risk management terms, we always say that if the cost of treating the risk is higher than the cost of the risk itself, there will be no point of implementing that particular risk treatment option or to fix that particular issue in our environment. But again, the question now will be, if we're only looking at the cost alone at this present time, how are we going to determine what is going to happen in the future? For example, we talked about the fact that some risks that we do in the vulnerability assessments, where we identify particular risk scenarios, it's possible that some of the risk scenarios that we identified could not be actual threats to our organization at this particular point in time. But does that mean that the risks are insignificant? Of course not. The risks are still there. The problem is that there are no threats at that time to be able to exploit that particular risk. And so it's important to capture all the different possible risk scenarios that can happen to our business when it comes to cybersecurity, identify them and put measures for them. What we are focusing here on the protect and defend phase of this cybersecurity framework is what we call the basic things that have to be done in an organization. Starting from defining web and email protection, your online portal or your online presence your trading portal is your online presence. It's where your customers come and do business. What happens when this online presence goes down due to a DDoS attack? What happens when this online presence goes down when there is a vulnerability exploitation from cyber attackers on this particular web application? It's important that we need to be able to protect our applications, to be able to mitigate against running attacks that happen in our business, also our web or online presence. There is also email exchange that happens between we and our customers, or between we and third parties. We also want to ensure that essential email protection features are enabled. These are very basic. There is also the case of patch management. Now, you see, most of the different hacks that have occurred, which has incurred a lot of losses in the different stock markets across the world, are simply due to someone not providing the accurate patch or patching a particular system. You see, the truth is that the patches may even be available. Maybe we forgot, maybe we don't know that they are there, because that patch is not remediated or fixed to that particular system or that particular application. That patch can be exploited, and then we begin to lose in terms of money. So again, patch management is key. When we're speaking about patch management, we're talking about an automated way of doing this patch management. We want to be able to ensure that patch management is done when it's supposed to be done and not put under a human or a person, because it's possible that human error would occur. Person could omit to apply a particular patch to a particular system or a particular laptop. It could be a laptop that even connects to the back end of the application, for example. So having a solution that provides a continuous patch management installation to all the different systems in place is also key. There is also antivirus installation. And this is virus. We talked about viruses too. And most of your systems, like I said before, apart from just having the online presence, you also have your own laptops that connect to this online presence from the back end. Most of these your systems make use of Windows operating systems that connect to them. Again, the question is, when those laptops or desktops or systems have virus-related issues, what happens? It's very possible that because of that particular virus infection on your own system or laptop, it will open a backdoor to the online presence that you have to that particular web trading portal. So installation of antivirus solutions on each sensitive endpoint or laptop or desktop environment is important. Of course, there is the case of we have people who are working from remote, and it will not be possible to go from person to person and start installing antivirus. How do you manage centrally? Again, cloud security solutions exist. Cloud security solutions help to be able to manage every endpoint or every laptop, desktop, wherever they are, to be able to install those antiviruses, to be able to make sure that they are up to date, and to provide reports to executive management about the status of every system that is speaking to your trading portal from the back end. Not to be overlooked is this very important part, which is the cybersecurity awareness. Now, I would say this. As we repeat it, as we have said it in other forums or other groups, that when it comes to information security, the human factor or the human is the most important as well as the less secure. I'll say that again. In information security, in this shade of information security, the human factor is always the most important as well as the less secure. Now, I'll tell you why. I told you before, we talked about the fact that every organization has processes, technology, and people as components of an organization. The truth is that an organization can have the best of technology. You define a technology to be able to work in a particular way, and it works. It's the best. You have tested it over time, and it works. That's okay. You can also have the best of processes. You can be able to develop, define, and adopt processes within the organization that work well, and it's good. But when it comes to the people, you see, you can never really determine how a person is going to behave at every point in time. And that is why we always say that the human factor is the most important as well as the less secure edition of information security. The simple key to fixing this human factor issue is creating cyber security awareness. It's a very simple task, but it's actually very important because you want to be able to help people to be able to understand how they can be cyber security aware, what they must do, tips, things, suggestions, things they're supposed to do and put in place so that they don't fall victim. This cyber security awareness has to come from the top. So the executive management, business leaders within a particular organization have to take the lead. They want to be able to be the ones to champion this cybersecurity awareness. They want to be able to plan it in the organization and ensure that at stipulated points in time during the day, everyone, when I mean everyone, including those who are what we consider the least employees, or they are the least, they're very important. They are cleaners, whoever they are in the organization, they must be cyber security aware. And that is why cybersecurity awareness is what we recommend as one of the things that you must do within your organization at planned intervals every year. So after implementing controls to be able to protect or defend against the threats that we know, it's now important to understand that, well, no matter what controls we put in the environment, what we are simply doing is just simply raising our cybersecurity assurance. So if we have determined that where we were in that phase one was at 50%, and after implementing controls, what we just discussed in this protect and defend, we have moved from 50% to 80% or 90%. The truth is that we can never hit 100%. There is no individual, there is no organization, there is no system that is 100% secure. It has never been, it will never will be. The question now will be, as a way of taking care of that remaining parts, that residual risk, those parts that we can never ensure to be 100%, what can we do in the event that something happens to us? If after putting on these controls, something now happens. Again, that is why we talk about this last phase in the cybersecurity framework to close it up, which is respond and recover. Because we want to be able to respond to incidents. We want to be able to respond to disaster or to every cybersecurity incident as it happens. The key to doing so is to develop disaster recovery plans. Now, these are simply documents. The documentation, we're able to determine the different disaster that can happen in your organization. And when I mean disaster, I'm talking about disasters that are disruption to the business. What are the kind of cybersecurity disasters that can disrupt business? We want to be able to identify them. For each disaster or disruption to the business, we want to be able to identify our response, what we are going to do for every single disruption to the business. There could be disruption to, there could be a total lack of access to the building. There could be a total failure of the IT system, of the technology infrastructure. There could be a failure of the people themselves. So for each disruption in business, what are we supposed to do for every disruption? These are what's supposed to be documented in the recovery plan. Now, again, this recovery plan is supposed to be as simple and as succinct as possible, because it's supposed to be something that a person can be able to take up and read in the event of every disaster. But it's not just enough to be able to have a disaster recovery plan, which is just a document. We want to be able to test this disaster recovery plan. We would not wait until there's an actual disaster before we start implementing the plan. We want to be able to, from time to time, within a year, at different intervals, have a plan for testing the disaster recovery plan. So simulating different cybersecurity incidents within the organization and looking at how the different people within the organization respond to that particular incident is key. Then there's also the case of doing backup. Especially for those systems or technology that we have considered critical, we want to be able to do backups and ensure that those backups are managed effectively. In doing backups, what we also want to ensure that those backups are not done improperly. So you can imagine a person that is doing a backup of a particular server within the same location. In location A, we have the sensitive server, and in location B, we have the backup of the server. It doesn't really make any sense. Because what happens when something happens to location A? That's the kind of things we need to start thinking about. So the backups have to be done properly. The backup management solutions or whatever we have in place have to be effectively done so that in the event of any disaster, we can be able to recover. Again, we have to have continuous testing of the backups. We want to be able to simulate what happens when this system goes down. Can we be able to restore this backup that we have? Is the data going to be consistent? If the data that we had in the beginning that we're using for trading is the same kind of data that we have when we restore, that means we have an effective backup solution. Else, it means that what we are backing up is wrong. So you can see it's not just about implementing things, it's about testing them. The plans, testing the backup processes to ensure that whenever this kind of incident happens, we can respond and we can recover back to business. Then after all said is done, there is also the part about monitoring. We want to be able to monitor from time to time. You see, we've identified where we are. We've identified that these are the things that we need to put in place. From time to time, just as we do financial audits of ourselves, we want to do cybersecurity audits within ourselves internally. Where are we? Or where did we determine that we were? Now, have we reached where we're supposed to be? Have we gotten there? That's essentially what monitoring improvements helps us to do. To be able to make sure that at every point in time, we are on point when it comes to cybersecurity. So this is where, this is exactly what this framework is. I'm going to recap here. Essentially, what we have talked about is that as your organization, you want to start to focus on cybersecurity risk as part of your operational risk. The cybersecurity attack that is going to happen is present. It is not about if it will happen. It's about when you will know about it that has happened to your organization. It's not an if, it's when you will know that has happened. And that's why it's important that business leaders, compliance officers, IT managers, all of them need to come together to be able to realize that cybersecurity risk is key for defining for business. Again, like we mentioned, the whole idea is making money. But essentially, the key to making money is not losing the one you already have, because you want to that we're still maintaining profitability. Again, at the end of the day. So determining the cybersecurity risk and implementing controls, like we talked about the cybersecurity framework, is key for us to be able to make sure that we have a cybersecurity maturity, both for ourselves, both for the people that work in an organization, for the processes that drive the organization, and for the technology that we have implemented for our organization. Well, thank you very much for coming for this session. We are very happy that you could join us. For those of us that are joining us, for those of us that joined us early, thank you very much. Some of us join us later. Also, thank you very much for joining. There's some of our colleagues that did not join us, maybe because of one thing or another. We still appreciate them. Well, these slides are going to be sent to every person here for them to just go through. But essentially, beyond these discussions, if you have any questions, if you have any inquiries, I'm just a phone call or an email away from you. You can send an email to, I think a follow-up mail is going to be sent to you. I'll send an email. You can ask any questions, and then we can always provide you the answers. Earlier before, we talked about having the chats where you can drop your questions. I don't see any questions here. Maybe later on, maybe I want discussions with any of you. You may have questions that you want to share, and I'll be more than willing to talk about it. I'm going to So Clara has just dropped her email for dropping inquiries and questions. I'm going to hand over points to my colleague now, Clara, for her to wrap up and then take it up from there. Clara, over to you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Goodness, for that elaborate section. Like we said, we didn't see any questions. If anybody has any question, we are still going to be able to take it. If you feel more comfortable sending us an email, giving us a call, like he said, I've provided my details, and you can, when we send you the presentation slides, you can also make your inquiries. Our website is also active and available. So I hope we'll be able to have some sort of clarity into the cyber threats in our industry. We sincerely appreciate you for your time, and we look forward to working with you and continuing our business relationship with you. Thank you once again and have a good day, everyone. Thank you.